Good morning and good afternoon, everybody. My name is Oliver Turan. I am the sales manager here at CAD Technology Center. We had a lot of interest in today's presentation. We'll try and get through the information clear and concise and convey it in a way that everybody can understand. But it is somewhat of a not difficult topic, but perhaps complex topic with a few different moving parts and things to be discussed that are internal to your firm as far as how this will affect each one of your licensing decisions moving forward. And we're certainly open to fielding those questions on a one-on-one basis as well. And we've been doing that over the last few months here as details have emerged from Autodesk. So certainly feel free to ask questions in the questions portion of the GoToWebinar interface. I'll take those questions towards the end of our presentation. But what I'll be doing here is we'll go through this slide deck that is provided by Autodesk because I really want you to hear their messaging around what's happening. And as we do that, as you've come to expect from us and definitely from myself, I'll add some color specific from CTC in our point of view and how we think perhaps it best conveys or needs to be understood by your client base. So we'll cover some of the Autodesk marketing around this move, why they're doing it, some of the benefits that they see for their customer base moving through this. And then, like I said, I'll put on my CTC hat and explain with additional clarity and color. And we knew this would be a big topic. Autodesk made an announcement kind of in late February, early March, that they were going to be making a move to move maintenance licensed customers to their new subscription model. And that initial announcement email that they sent out to a lot of our customers, in fact, all of our customers, wasn't necessarily as clear as it could have been. And it led to some miscommunication and perhaps raised some false alarms as well. So we want to make sure that we convey the information appropriately. And then, as we've been doing here at CTC, and I mentioned, reach out to customers to explain their options and help them strategize specifically. So with that, I think I'll just briefly cover what maintenance is and what subscription is to give some context as far as what's happening here through the rest of our presentation. And one thing I would ask, if you could stay with me through the Autodesk messaging part, as towards the end we'll actually get into showing the plan in graphs and real math, and we'll show what this means. And we'll actually even cover some tips and tricks to navigate this discussion internally and help you guys plan your licensing into the future as well. So as I mentioned, first of all, I'd like to kind of level set with everybody and make sure everybody understands what maintenance is and what subscription is. And then from there we can explain what's happening. So maintenance licenses are what 99.9% of Autodesk customers own. They paid an initial fee to purchase the product, say an AutoCAD as an example, and they probably paid a few $1,000s, let's say back in 2012. And then they've been paying a yearly maintenance fee to keep that license up to date. And they've received updates to AutoCAD 2013, 2014, 2015 by paying that yearly maintenance fee. However, if at any point they decided to stop maintaining their license by paying that yearly fee, they would simply stop receiving updates. But they would still own whatever that most current version they got to. So if they stopped paying maintenance on the AutoCAD 2015 product, as an example, they would still own AutoCAD 2015 and would be able to use that product for as long as they like. So most businesses require the latest tools regardless, both internally and to communicate externally in different file types and the latest software with outside consultants. So the vast majority of companies, probably 99% of CTC customers, maintain their licenses with that yearly maintenance fee. And really, like, the only time they would ever drop licenses off maintenance is if, you know, they were never going to use that product at all ever in the future, or perhaps, you know, studios are closing, something like that would happen where they would need to no longer maintain existing licenses they own. Subscription, the new models, the easiest way to say it is it's a lease. It's a term-based license. You're paying to use the product for a specific term, for instance, a year. So if you no longer need use of the product, you simply stop paying the subscription and you no longer have access to run the product. So this certainly has some advantages in that you can buy the term you require for your specific project needs. Perhaps you get an influx of work. You don't need to pay a high initial fee to purchase the software outright. You can just lease it for the duration of for perhaps interns coming in or contract workers coming in, or perhaps you have a big project that's going to require specialized software use for a period of time, the subscription model is advantageous in a lot of those scenarios. And for a few years now, Autodesk has offered both of these options, right? And so now since February, they've announced we're changing things. We're going to offer the ability to switch maintenance licenses that people own and have been paying to maintain to the lease subscription model. So with that, we'll jump into the slide deck that Autodesk had provided. So definitely feel free to ask questions as we go, and if I don't answer them, I'll certainly do that towards the end. So Autodesk certainly believes that subscribing is the best way to get you, the customer, the greatest value in the tools and technologies. Subscribing fundamentally changes how Autodesk delivers capabilities and add new functionalities through connected services. And that's why Autodesk is moving towards becoming a subscription-only company. Autodesk will continue to invest heavily in the subscription offerings to provide Autodesk customers with greater value. Through this transition, Autodesk has heard that customers don't like to manage two different licensing models. That can be costly, it's complex. Understanding what products are available in subscription, which products they're maintaining, co-terming agreements, you end up with kind of a hodgepodge of licensing that might become cumbersome to manage. And having those two different business models is costly, both on the Autodesk side of maintaining the two different license models, the back-end systems to track licensing, and it does obviously extend some cost to the customer as well in that regard in managing and wrapping their head around the licensing, as I mentioned. And certainly one thing I can definitely agree with is having a single licensing model provides simplicity. So if everything is all subscription, everything's term-based, that's a little easier to understand, and I would also say it's perhaps easier to budget and future plan around. So switching to subscription makes, and this is Autodesk words here, switching to subscription makes good business sense both in terms of longer-term cost savings and added value that Autodesk will be providing exclusively to subscribers. So this is where I read the Autodesk marketing stuff on this, and I know I want to put on my CTC hat. There's a couple things we can read from this messaging. One thing is they mention that they, in that last comment there, longer term cost savings, which we'll show here in a minute through the PowerPoint and through some of the graphs I've created, and added value that we'll be providing exclusively to subscribers. So we can certainly see some of that already. Many of their products that have come out recently can only be leased or only are in this subscription model. Case in point, InfraWorks. So if you've used InfraWorks, you are leasing that product in the new subscription model. Collaboration for Revit, another newer product. It's Revit Server in the cloud, and it's offered as a per-user service through the subscription model, right? So we see more and more consumption-based use of Autodesk products, and certainly the latest products are only available in the subscription model. And some of that definitely makes sense from a technological standpoint as well, where you might only require those types of products or services for a specific set period of time, right? So now how does this kind of make the transition? As we have these maintenance licenses, why is Autodesk making this move? What's in it for me? And how much is it going to cost me? And when is it happening, right? So we're going to jump into those things now. So Autodesk announced that available in June, and we don't have an exact date, a maintenance customer will have a path to move their licenses into the subscription model. And one thing that I want to mention here, they are offering what they're terming a special offer that recognizes your loyalty and the value of your previous investments. They understand that you've paid thousands of dollars to own a license of AutoCAD or own a license of Revit or Civil 3D or Building Design Suite, all of these different products. And so what they're looking to do is convey that you've received value of that, and we're going to continue to provide value in that you're going to be paying less than somebody else coming in and leasing the products for the very first time. So we'll kind of explain that and how that kind of loyalty equals value as we get later on in the presentation. So I just wanted to convey that right up front. So sometime in June, this switch will be available. And it's a phased switch, and we'll kind of cover some of that. So what can you switch? So if you have a maintenance for an individual product, for instance, an AutoCAD, you can move that to AutoCAD. You don't have to change necessarily to another software platform or a different software type. You can maintain, if you're on AutoCAD today or on an individual Revit license, you can go directly to a Revit license. You also have the ability to go to an industry collection. So industry collections is something relatively new that Autodesk has announced and been selling for a while in the subscription-only model, which is basically an AEC collection, as an example, for architects, engineers, and contractors, is pretty much every desktop installed product that they have in one bundle. So they're going to offer the ability to make switches here to those industry collections, and that may actually provide some additional value, and I'll kind of talk about that once again at the later end of this presentation when we talk about how this could be advantageous from a licensing standpoint and some of those tips and tricks. So what is the price to switch to a subscription? If you've been paying maintenance for several years, you pretty much know exactly what your maintenance fee has been year over year, or perhaps if you've been renewing every 3 years, you're going to know pretty much exactly what your switch price is going to be then. So if you're on an individual product, say a Revit, right, and you're going to be now renewing here past May 7th, which is when they're going to make a bump in maintenance fee renewal price, the price to switch will actually be the same as your maintenance renewal. So in the scenario of you have a Revit license and you want to maintain a Revit license, but you're going to switch it to a subscription model, it's going to be the same. You're just going to have two paths to choose. Either you renew it as maintenance or you switch it to subscription. But the price you'd pay in that first year are the same. So that's important to understand. Now obviously if you took, say, that Revit license and you chose to move it to an industry collection, well, then you're getting some additional products, so you might see a price increase then if you chose to switch it to, obviously, a higher tier product that includes AutoCAD and Navisworks Manage and InfraWorks and Formit and a bunch of other really nice tools. And we'll explain that as we get into the actual pricing breakdown later on as well. Now, one of the incentives to make that switch to subscription is that when you do so, Autodesk is going to secure that pricing for 3 years. And you actually have two ways to secure that pricing for 3 years. Basically act as price protection, right? You can either say, okay, I'm going to switch my Revit license to subscription and I'm going to pay for 3 years upfront. So you've taken your renewal, it's increased 5% regardless if you're going to maintain it or switch to subscription. You've chosen to switch to subscription and you can pay for 3 years upfront. However, and that, by the way, that's a great option if you're already budgeted for a 3-year renewal already, right? So Autodesk will obviously will take your money, and like that works out just fine. If you've already budgeted for a 3-year renewal, switching might make sense, and we can talk about some of the other things that would go into making that decision. Or you can choose to pay just the annual subscription, and then you're still going to be able to renew in years 2 and 3 at that same price. So by switching to subscription, you're locking in your price for 3 years. So we'll talk a little bit about that moving forward. So obviously if you only budgeted for a single year maintenance renewal, you can still do the switch and get the price protection, which is nice. So what are some of the advantages of subscription? Autodesk kind of puts the 3 different value buckets into these 3 words: access, control, and insights. Access, as I kind of alluded to and mentioned before, customers get access to a broader range of the latest and greatest tools, technologies that Autodesk is coming out with, acquiring, integrating into their suites of tools, their collections. From a control standpoint, Autodesk is working on providing better use as far as managing users and controlling the cost through that control. And on the insight side, customers are going to be able to leverage reporting and analytics across users and products to evaluate that spend, productivity, and future needs perhaps a little bit more closely. So let's talk about each one of these 3 areas briefly, and then we'll get into kind of the cost of all this. So from an access standpoint, Autodesk is looking to provide the additional capabilities, whether they're cloud services or updates to core products, and stream these updates as soon as they're available at no additional cost. So they're looking to, I guess so this is my CTC hat on again, once again. Look to stream updates and services to your users as they become available, which may, depending upon how you're structured and organized, affect IT, perhaps positively, if they're managing more of streaming updates in the way that Google Chrome does to your machine versus service packs and things like that in a traditional deployment of Autodesk products perhaps is a little bit more cumbersome. So we'll talk a little bit more about that, and some of this is future looking too. This is what they're looking to do, and not necessarily what they have available right here today, because once again this whole switch thing goes into effect in June, and that they're obviously looking to deliver these types of values, upon that switch becoming available. So the other thing is access to the new industry collections. That actually is, I think, a pretty compelling point that could offer significant savings when customers need 2 or more Autodesk software products. So if you've managed your licensing through CTC in the past, or we've helped you in those conversations and discovery to license you guys appropriately, you might not gain as much through the industry collections because we probably already got you honed in pretty well. But if you're inheriting perhaps Autodesk licenses, or some got transferred over through an acquisition or something like that, definitely taking a look at how you're licensed and using the current Autodesk products, the industry collections could actually help you in rolling back your spend with Autodesk. Support, new and improved support. So you may have heard this or even engaged with this. Autodesk has been offering direct support for AutoCAD and AutoCAD LT for a little bit of time here. They've also offered what they call advanced support, which you could purchase on some of their products. That would open up basically a direct telephone line that you could call with product questions to Autodesk. Now obviously CTC, we've always offered free and unlimited technical support to customers who buy their licensing through us, but this obviously would also give you the option to schedule a call with Autodesk technical support specialist as well, offering more around-the-clock 24/7, 365 support, because they're supporting the entire worldwide in Autodesk client base versus CTC obviously working primarily North America for Autodesk product support. The other one is cloud connected services. Many of these things are already in place today, but certainly more and more of these cloud services are being released each year, and they're primarily subscription-based offerings. So I'm not going to go too in-depth with that one. Control, I talked about that a little bit. Simplified administration, they're looking to streamline the deployment and software management. Easy user management. Right now you have the ability to upload and provide access via an Excel spreadsheet to different email addresses of individuals within your organization as far as who should have access to which products, which cloud services from Autodesk. They're actually looking to make that better. Now I can't talk specifics because I'm under NDA on some of the things, but some of the things that many of my customers have been asking for have been, for instance, like a tie-in to Active Directory to set permissioning and things to software and projects and updates and so forth. Product updates, that's the other thing. Autodesk is actually looking, as they provide this stream of updates to users, give you still the control to decide who and when Autodesk get the latest technology. So it's not that they're completely bypassing your IT department. They actually do want to handle some of those things for you, offer streamlined deployment, software management, but still give you the control of when that happens, and in some cases even how that happens. So just want to kind of alleviate some fears there that they're not completely taking the keys away from your IT department. The other thing that they're promising is insights. So usage reporting, kind of pay-as-you-go connected cloud services, keeping track of how you're spending your cloud credits and things like that. Some of that's started to be seen in the Autodesk account interface. If you're a contract manager, you may have seen that. The other thing is obviously looking at budget planning. So as they show you which products are being used, when they're being used, and how they're being used, hopefully that will help you to forecast spend. And they're also looking to provide customers the convenience of charging subscription costs annually back to projects. So those are Autodesk words on that. So whether that ends up being a possibility within your firm or not, obviously there's other internal politics and things like that to be discussed, but that they're looking to give that level of visibility or insight to this process. All right, so let's talk about what this looks like from a pricing standpoint. So we've already mentioned that maintenance prices on May 7th are going to increase by 5%. And by the way, maintenance pricing for Autodesk has been pretty consistent. They haven't seen very many increases across the board anyways for a few years now. So on May 7th, they've announced that they're going to be increasing the maintenance renewal price by 5%, which is a fairly modest price increase for maintenance. So if you're planning on renewing your maintenance after May 7th this year, so say you have a contract coming up in July, your maintenance renewal price will be 5% higher than it was last year, should you choose to maintain. In May 2018, it's going up by another 10%, and then another 20% in May 2019. So we see that. So we're going to kind of compare these two paths that you have to choose here. The maintenance we're kind of seeing now, and now the subscription. So once again, the price to switch is the same as the price to renew in that first year. And then you're seeing actually smaller steps up in pricing of the switch in years 2 and 3 as well. So instead of going up by 10% and then 20%, we're just seeing a 5% bump. So we're kind of see two divergent pricing models here, where it's going to be cheaper if you can switch to subscription. However, is that necessarily the right move all the time for everyone? It may be, but there are some limitations, validation questions that we'd want to talk through. So let's look at what this looks like long term. Maintenance and subscription. So in the blue bar here, the steps, we're seeing the 5% initial increase here in May. We're seeing another 10% bump in year 2. And then we're seeing a 20% bump in year 3 there. So once again, in this first year, whether you choose to maintain or switch, it's the same price. And if you do switch, you're secured your pricing for 3 years. And once again, you could pay for this all in one lump sum, pay for 3 years up front, or you could renew for 1 year, renew another year, and then renew your 3rd year. And it's going to lock that pricing for you should you switch. So you're not impacted by these price increases on maintenance renewals in years 2 and 3. Right? So what happens if perhaps you're not due for renewal for a whole nother calendar year? Right? What does that look like? Or perhaps you choose to maintain in this first year and you then want to switch in the 2nd year. Well then, as we saw before, that price to switch increases by just 5%. So it's not going up an addition, the 10% and then maintaining. It's just a bump of 5%, and that again secures the pricing for 3 years. But it does increase. The price to switch does increase, right? So we'll kind of talk about forecasting. I actually have a calculator from Autodesk that is covering much of this, and it actually does it at a product by product level. We'll get into that in a moment. And obviously, if you waited until year 3 to switch, we're then saying that it'll be about 15% higher than the 2016 maintenance price. And the reason why, like, we use the word about and it'll be roughly is because we don't necessarily know which product you're going to switch to. If you're moving from an AutoCAD to an AEC collection, well, you're getting a lot more products out of that, then your switch price would be higher, right? But if we're talking just AutoCAD maintenance to AutoCAD switch onto subscription, it's going to be in that 15% range should you wait until year 3 to switch. So what happens beyond the year 3, right? So what we're seeing here is, and Autodesk has put this in writing, if you switch in this first year, when you come off contract, do you then have to pay the full subscription SRP price of what somebody new would be buying it at? No, that's not the case. You'll be able to renew at a discounted price beyond the 3-year lock-in, right? So they're saying it'll be about 15% higher than whatever your last one, because once again it went up 5%, another 5%, another 5% after 3 years. You're going to be in this kind of range here for your renewal. Basically what we're going to see here is kind of loyalty tiers. Once again, that's a term I'm using for this. Maybe if they switch in the first year, we'll call this loyalty tier 1. Switch in the 2nd year, loyalty tier 2. Year 3, loyalty tier 3, because we're going to see price locks, and basically when you step up will matter when you locked in. Okay? All right, so let's look at that with actual dollars associated to it, and the example that I have pulled up is actually AutoCAD. So right now today, if you're renewing your maintenance on an AutoCAD, it's $545. May 7th comes, it's $570 to renew that AutoCAD. If you choose to switch, it's the same $570 first year. And that secures your pricing for the 3 years. If you wait until year 2, maintain it, $625. Switch to subscription, cheaper, $600. We see that, once again, the price lock. Year 3 to renew the maintenance, $750, right? So the two roads are becoming farther apart. The fork in the road is now diverging more and more. $750 to maintain it, $630 to switch it to the subscription path. And so this is Autodesk incentivizing you, obviously, through these price increases to make that switch to subscription, to give up, trade in the car that you own for a new car that you're leasing, right? So now that we've kind of talked through this, this is obviously a slide for illustrative purposes. Autodesk puts on here subject to change. They've communicated this to pretty much everybody at this point. One thing I do want to mention here, if you look at what does an AutoCAD cost, an annual subscription, single user, SRP for 1 year, it's $1,470. So if you kind of look at this model and extrapolate it out, how many years in the future would you need to get to that level where you're paying SRP, if you ever do get to that point? Perhaps they continue to offer some loyalty tier that will be lower than that. And that's really where the savings of owning your licenses now comes into play, right? So if somebody came in tomorrow and said, I need access to AutoCAD, they would be paying $1,470 for 1 year of it. And the next year they pay $1,470. And the next year, $1,470. And so the initial investment of you spending, let's say, $3,000 to buy your AutoCAD years ago and renew it at $545 for a number of years, you've basically recouped your cost versus if you had been paying their full price subscription all those years. All right. So with that, let's jump over to the calculator spreadsheet. Let me get that on screen here. All right. So this is a calculator created by Autodesk. Unfortunately, I can't share it because it's not fully done yet. That will help have a conversation with you around what makes sense for your firm specifically. So I'll kind of walk you through how this calculator works, and then we'll look at some of the extrapolated math out of it. And in fact, just for the sake of doing this in front of you guys, I want to make sure we kind of do this live. So I'm going to clear out some fields here. All right. So the switch from column would be products that you currently own. And in fact, I'm going to use pretty much that example that I had pulled up before. So let's say we own some AutoCAD products, and let's say those AutoCAD seats are multi-user or network licensed. And I've got 10 of those currently at my firm. So we're starting to see the math come over here on these other charts. And for the time being, I'm just going to zoom in so everybody can see this portion a little better. And let's say we've got some other products as well. We own a building design suite premium. In fact, we own quite a few network licenses of that. Now, once again, these principles that we're going to talk about here in a minute will apply to regardless of what kind of products you currently own. And let's say we also own a few building design suite ultimate licenses. And those are also multi-user licenses because we needed access to Navisworks at the time, right? And maybe we've got just 2 of those. And then we've got perhaps some design architects, or perhaps we acquired another firm and they owned Revit licenses. That's what they had. And those licenses were standalone or single user licenses, and there's 5 of those, right? So we haven't picked what we might switch those products to yet, but we're able to see what our maintenance renewal cost would be coming across. So cost breakdown scenarios, stay on maintenance through the 3-year term, would cost us that much overall across the 3 years. And we're starting to see some bar graphs over here as well. So let's go back and now let's talk about if we did switch, what would that look like? So AutoCAD, you know what? We're probably just going to be able to switch that, go ahead and switch it to AutoCAD. So we're going to put that in. And Building Design Suite, those switch to an AEC collection. The Ultimates, their only option is to switch to an AEC collection as well, which is actually advantageous because the switch will be cheaper than what an Ultimate renews at. And let's say the Revit license is, I'm just going to go ahead and switch to Revit. So as we kind of look at this scenario, we can see the 3-year price lock, right? So here's what our renewal is in year 1. I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little. We see what our renewal would be in year 1 of the switch, year 2 of the switch cost, year 3 of the switch cost. Our maintenance, our total switch cost, our cost if we stay on maintenance, 3-year cost comparison. And then it's just kind of extrapolating out here what would be the new subscription if we just kind of let everything drop, didn't do anything with it, and chose to buy it all later, or lease it all again later, I should say, for 3 years. So obviously, just kind of show that yes, you are getting a discount versus somebody walking in off the street and owning no existing maintenance licenses, what that savings looks like. And we've got some bar charts as well, which could be helpful, obviously, for our customers to have a conversation internally as far as how this stacks up. This little chart down here, pretty useful as well. The grayed out prices are the maintenance prices, and the green prices are if the switch price. So getting into subscription. And we can see here if we switch in year 1, $33,775, and we've price locked that for 3 years. So our total investment in 3 years worth of software, $101,000. If we wait until year 2, once again the price increase is bumped up a little bit. In that switch price, we've price locked. So in 3 years we've spent $106,000. Obviously, if we wait till year 3, what that looks like, and then if we never switched and just stayed on maintenance, what does that price look like? And then we see that extrapolated out over here in a graph as well. Now, let's talk a little bit about as far as strategy goes on this. How do we use this to our advantage as a customer, as a user of Autodesk software, to get lean where we can and maybe even save money? That's what we're all looking to do here if we can. And in some scenarios, there is cost savings here to be had. But we definitely have to have a conversation with you as far as what makes sense. So as an example, let's say in this scenario, these architects here that are using these 5 standalone single-user Revit licenses, they're probably also needing AutoCAD sometimes, right? So they're primarily Revit users, but yeah, they get as-built drawings in AutoCAD and DWGs, and they need to open them up, in which case they start pulling these network multi-user licenses. So then that one single user is then pulling some AutoCAD licenses sometimes, and you have to maintain 2 sets of licenses for one type of user, perhaps. Well, in this scenario, perhaps it makes sense to take these AutoCADs, move them to AEC collection, and then, because those include Revit and they're multi-user, and you simply don't renew these, right? Or, in the other scenario, let's go back and add those back on. Oops, 5, not 6. Perhaps it makes sense if those people are going to be working on the road and you want to leave them as standalone licenses, maybe you move these to AEC collections, and then you roll back the total number of AutoCADs you're keeping around. Because AEC collection also includes AutoCAD, and they would no longer be using the multi-user network licenses. So in that scenario, if you look at this over here, we were at like $101,000 before over the 3 years. By making this tweak, if that still licenses you appropriately, we've saved $6,000 from what it would have been if we just blindly switched everything. So this is where I kind of want to mention details matter. I've attached the customer-facing frequently asked questions to the handouts section in this GoToWebinar, so you're more than welcome to grab that. That is the latest from Autodesk. But beyond that, I would definitely suggest you reach out to CTC whenever you have a few moments to chat, and we go through this exercise with you specifically. Talk about how you're licensed today, how you guys are using the licenses, actually get it into the inputs here, and then talk through what makes sense from a licensing standpoint moving forward. And there might be a scenario where we work up 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different options and start talking through the implications of that and the planning of that. The other thing I would say is it's not necessarily an all or nothing proposition here where you have to switch all of your licenses or none of your licenses. You can also pick and choose. So this is another thing that it comes into play. So for instance, we had 10 of these AutoCADs before. Let's say we're going to switch 5 of them. Perhaps for some reason, it makes sense to not switch 5 and just maintain the other 5. Right? So in this case, we're saying if we didn't switch that AutoCAD, what does that look like extrapolated out? So there's a lot of different ways to kind of analyze this, look at it, and dig in, but definitely leverage CTC. We're experienced, obviously, in having these conversations. As they say, the devil is in the details. There's a lot of things to consider: previous versions, multi-user network licenses, standalone licenses, single-user licenses, whether you're going to have internet access at these sites, what products you might require moving forward, not just in your existing workflows, but moving forward is important to discuss. There's a lot of details there, and I couldn't possibly cover every possible scenario here on an open-ended webcast. So I hope you guys can appreciate that. I certainly appreciate your time in watching this with me today. I'm now going to pull up the questions section and see what we have in there for questions, and hopefully I'll be able to answer them for you here. Just give me a moment as I get that pulled up here. Oh, this is a lovely setup here. Okay. Couple of questions here I can't really speak to because they are so specific to how a firm is licensed, and I guess I don't want to get into the weeds too much on some of this stuff. Just reading through it here. So one question that came in, will I be forced to have access to more software in a suite I will never use? So the answer is no. You can just take, for instance, your single product to a single product on the switch, or just continue to maintain your single product. But one thing I do want to mention is perhaps the suite makes sense where you're going to use 2 of those products, or perhaps long-term you see the need where you're going to be using those products. What you can do is you can actually move it to a collection if you'd like. You don't necessarily have to install everything that's in the collection. And in fact, you can just download even just the products out of the collection that you're actually going to use at that point in time. So you're not forced to install or download some giant terabyte big download for the AEC collection or something like that. You can just pull what you need. All right, another question came in. For a switch from an individual product to an industry collection, is there any discount applied to the industry collection? The answer, I guess, would be yes. And so the AEC collection, when you switch to that, and actually let me go back to the spreadsheet to answer this. When you move from any product to the AEC collection, this is a fixed price when you switch to it. So regardless if you're switching from a Revit or an AutoCAD or a building design suite or an Ultimate, that AEC collection switch price is normalized around the building design suite premium price, which is going to be, by the way, $1,075. So if you switch from a premium to an AEC collection in 1 year, it's going to cost you $1,075. So where that comes into play is an Ultimate actually renews now for much more than that. So unless you're using the Inventor out of the Ultimate, switch those to an AEC collection because you're actually going to save money on each one of those. Premium, you're going to pay the same. And if you're switching from an AutoCAD or a Revit to a collection, it's the same as if you had owned a Premium or Ultimate as well. So it's a normalized price when you switch to go to a collection. Once again, probably best if we actually show that to you specifically and do it live with you. Will the cost calculator ever become available to us as clients? Good question. This one, no. However, Autodesk is working on making a web-based version. And the reason why by the way, they're not making this one available just yet is not all of the available switch paths are programmed in here yet. So they don't have every possible product that you could own, and they don't have every possible switch input in here just yet either. So they are working on that. Obviously, I would have liked to add that upon them announcing this change, but Autodesk didn't get to that. Secondly, second question to that, if we switch to subscription now, what happens to previous maintenance versions? For example, would I still be able to keep Revit 2015, quote unquote, forever? Well, keep, no. Use, yes. So, and there's details that matter there. So in the new subscription model, obviously the subscription model hasn't been around forever. Right? It's only been around for a few years now. So there's certain products going backwards that there was never a build of that software in the old subscription model. So Autodesk is making allowances for in situations where you need to use previous versions and you've already requested those and been authorized to use them through your maintenance. Where possible, they're going to continue to let you do that. So for instance, Revit 2015 would be one of those scenarios that is something that they would make available for you to use because that's one of the 3 supported previous versions currently on the supported versions list. And in fact, there is a previous versions matrix that will actually get into the details of which products are available when you switch to subscription, which ones are not, as far as previous version use goes. So once again, individual conversation probably best there to get into what you guys are using, what you might be using, and then does it make sense to switch or not. Yep, so another question on here, if we could explain multi-user licenses on subscription. Does that still require the network license manager on a local server? Good question, Tom. Thank you for that one. Yes, it does. So currently, multi-user subscription licenses still use the network license manager on a local server today. Now, Autodesk may do something in the future where maybe their internet cloud license. This is me talking, and I know nothing about this. I'm not disclosing anything because I don't know. But as of today, yes, they use the same FlexLM. They still issue a license file just like the maintenance licenses, and they still come out of the network license pool. One question came in. I may have to actually do some research on this one, but Norman asked, what is the status of Autodesk cloud-based products in regard to the FedRAMP approval for federal government? I know Autodesk will have a response for that. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. They do have an Autodesk Trust Center, which gets into the certification as far as what they have for their cloud-based products as security, different certificates they hold, different authorizations that they have. But I will actually get you a formal answer, Norman, and I'll be in contact one-on-one after this. Another question on old spreadsheet available, covered that. Some of these are long, and I completely understand why they're long questions because once again, you guys are getting into, if I had X and if I wanted to do Y, what would be my best options and things like that. What I'm actually going to do is take those questions and have my account executives follow up with you guys specifically, whoever you've been working with here at CTC, to actually walk you through this. And we can jump on a one-on-one webcast to talk through this. More questions coming in. This is great, guys. I appreciate all the questions. The other thing I would say is definitely read through the handout that I have posted as well. Here's a good one. If we switch to subscription now for all of our licenses, what would be the cost for a new license if one is needed? Well, and to be honest, it's what it is today. So this switch is only offered on the maintenance products you guys currently own. It's an incentive based upon you guys owning and being loyal to Autodesk, yet using these products for many years. So they're giving you discounted pricing on those licenses in the subscription model. If you need more licensing, then you're paying, what the cost is of a new subscription. There's no like grandfathered in rate. If you switch 40 Revits over and you need 44 Revits, you're buying those 4 at the, the then market rate through whatever promotion Autodesk has available for new subscriptions. but there's always offers and things like that too. So if you are in a scenario of that where you need to look at or even increase overall usage, have a conversation with us, because once again, the switch comes into play where perhaps based upon what you guys own, just by switching to collections or doing some other license switching here, we might actually be able to license you based upon the current counts you have, just moving them to the appropriate paths, I guess. Another question around home use licenses. Do they work similar to the way that the suites do currently? Yes, they do. Good question. All right. So kind of an add-on question, somebody had asked around the use of the Network License Manager, and certainly the subscription licenses also use that. However, there's kind of an add-on question. Is it also required that you add a named user on the Autodesk account website? So the answer is no, unless you want to use the cloud-enabled features of some of those products. So for instance, Mike, say you have 5 AEC collection multi-user, quote-unquote, network licenses. You can deploy those on your network license server. You can roll out the software to users, and they can start using them. If, however, they need to do Revit Cloud rendering, or they need to log into the InfraWorks and use some of the cloud-enabled features inside of InfraWorks, or use Insight 360 or Formit or any of these other cloud-enabled applications, you do need to assign users to those roles. And the good news is when you switch to subscription, you can actually name 3 people per network license. So in the old maintenance realm, if you owned a, let's say a building design suite ultimate, you could assign 1 person to the cloud features of that license. When you switch it to an AEC collection, you can assign 3 people per license to those cloud enabled features. So this is another area where, once again, Autodesk is putting more value on the subscription offering versus the traditional maintenance offering. But once again, that's a detail where definitely want to talk with you guys individually if you're going to be using those or see an increased need, or perhaps you're already maxing out the number of cloud users that you have the ability to do that. There is a ton of questions. And we're a little over time right now, guys. So I apologize. I'm not going to answer all of the questions right now here today, but I will answer all of your questions. We'll be calling and following up specifically with each one of these. So no question will go unanswered or unnoted. I promise you that. So with that, I am going to stop recording and finish the webcast for today. I appreciate everybody's time once again. We have recorded this session. And we look forward to speaking with all of you individually. Feel free to reach out to us, but certainly if you left a question, we'll be reaching out to you. Thank you again, and have a great day, everybody.